Before dawn, the scribe's desk already holds the shape of a working day, though no hand is moving across it yet. The narrow board stands beneath a small oil lamp whose flame has lowered, but not gone out, and its light settles over a patient arrangement of parchment, wax, wood, and ink. Nothing here asks for attention in a loud way. A folded cloth rests beside the lamp to protect the driest sheets from soot. A knife for trimming quills lies flat near the edge, where it can be found by habit rather than by search. The desk has the quiet order of a place used many times in almost the same way, until the body learns the arrangement as surely as it learns the doorway of its own room. At this hour, the desk seems less like furniture than like a small field of duties held still for a moment. Even the shadows look practical. They gather behind a lamp base, under the wax tablet, and along the lip of the shelf above, leaving the most necessary surfaces gently clear. The board itself is plain, but long use has given it a kind of memory. Its front edge is smoother than the back, where sleeves rarely brushed it. The grain has darkened in places where wrists once leaned, and where ink was wiped too late from damp fingers. A desk like this did not need ornament to declare its purpose. It only needed firmness, enough width for a sheet of parchment, and a place within reach of a lamp that could be watched without effort. Such desks were often smaller than modern expectations would allow. Writing belonged to rooms where space was shared, and a writing surface had to coexist with shelves, stools, chests, and winter coal. Yet the restraint of the desk helped the work. There was little room for distraction. The copyist sat close. The lamp stood near. The text remained in a narrow world where eye, hand, and memory could meet one another without waste. Before dawn, when the room still keeps the night inside its stones, that concentrated world feels especially complete. On the desk lies a stack of parchment sheets that are not perfectly white, because no useful parchment ever truly was. Some hold a warm cream tone. Others drift toward gray where scraping and preparation left quieter marks in the skin. Their edges are not factory straight. They show the small uncertainties of material worked by hand, then cut, smoothed, and stored with care. When several sheets are laid together, they make a soft and restrained unevenness, each one thin enough to bend but stiff enough to hold its own corner. The scribe would have known how each kind received ink, how much pressure the pen should carry, and which sheet might better serve a copy meant for long keeping. At this hour, the sheets wait without complaint. They do not need to be read to be understood as labor already prepared. Their stillness suggests all the tasks that happened earlier: scraping, stretching, drying, sorting, and saving the best leaves for the most reliable use. The desk inherits the results of many hands, even while appearing almost empty. Near the upper corner rests the ink, dark in its small container, with a depth that the lamp can barely touch. Medieval ink was often less a luxury than a carefully managed necessity, mixed from materials whose value lay in steadiness rather than display. A good black line needed patience in preparation and discipline in use. Too thin, and the letters lost authority. Too thick, and the pen dragged where it should have moved easily. The little pot on the desk holds more than liquid. It holds time spent grinding, straining, and storing, as well as the expectation that each drop be used with economy. Beside it, the quill seems almost weightless by comparison. Yet the lighter tool depends entirely on the darker one. The quill brings motion, but the ink gives consequence. Before dawn, both remain quiet, and their silence is useful. It lets the room feel finished before work resumes. The line has not yet begun, but the means for making it are ready, like a sentence already gathered in the mind before the first word is spoken aloud. The wax tablet nearby belongs to a slower and more provisional kind of writing. Its surface can be marked, smoothed, and marked again, so it carries thoughts not yet granted the seriousness of parchment. Accounts, temporary reminders, short names, or rehearsed phrases could pass across wax before they reached a permanent page. Because of this, the The tablet brings a second tempo to the desk. Parchment asks for confidence. Wax permits hesitation. The stylus that serves it, whether of bone, metal, or shaped wood, carries two manners of touch. One end to inscribe, another to soften and erase. In that simple tool lives the ordinary medieval understanding that not every mark deserves forever. Before dawn, the wax tablet often feels especially calm because it preserves uncertainty without disorder. It can hold unfinished thought and still leave the room composed. A note begun yesterday may remain here until morning light returns. It does not trouble the desk. It merely waits for the mind that left it, much as the lamp waits for another careful trimming of its wick. Above the writing board, a small wooden shelf keeps the room from scattering its papers into corners. Shelves in such places were modest, but they mattered because vertical order saved both space and effort. A folded packet, a bundle of completed leaves, a narrow board with reference notes, or a little box for seals could rest above the desk without burdening the surface below. The eye learned this arrangement quickly. What was needed at once remained on the board. What must be kept dry, straight, and nearby could rise one level higher. In rooms of stone or timber, where walls carried cold and floors collected dust, elevation was a quiet form of protection. The shelf therefore belongs to the same logic as the chest, the peg, and the stool. Each object reduces trouble before trouble arrives. Before dawn, that shelf casts a narrow shadow across the wall, and its contents are partly hidden. Yet the partial hiding helps the room. It suggests reserve. Not everything must present itself at once. Some things can remain ready without insisting on notice. The lamp is the smallest ruler of the desk, though it governs everything within sight. Its flame decides where the parchment ends and where the room gives way to shadow. A lamp before dawn was never a matter of casual brightness. Oil cost something, wicks required trimming, and every extra moment of light carried responsibility. This made medieval lamplight more deliberate than modern illumination. It was used where it mattered and spared where it did not. On the scribe's desk, that discipline becomes visible in the pattern of things. The lamp stands close enough to guide the hand, but not so close that soot threatens the page. The brighter pool falls on the writing surface. The knife, quill, and ink sit within a second ring of half-light. Beyond that, the wall and stool are allowed to darken. Such practical gradation gives the room its calm. Nothing strains to be fully visible. Before dawn, the lamp's modest authority seems fitting, as though the room agrees that one small circle of clarity is enough for honest work. The stool at the desk is as important as the board, though it says less about itself. A seat built for regular copying would not promise softness. It would promise height, steadiness, and a position that could be returned to again and again. The work of writing required endurance of the back, neck, and wrist, so a bad stool would reveal itself, not in 1 hour but in many. Over time, the body learned its distances, how far the knees sat from the desk, where the feet met the floor, and how the weight shifted when the page turned or the pen was lifted. Before dawn, the stool waits with the same humility as the desk. No cushion dramatizes it. No carving improves it. Yet its presence confirms that this room expects repeated use, not occasional display. The calmness of the scene comes partly from that expectation. Everything here belongs to routine. Even the empty seat feels inhabited by habit, as though the work has stepped away for a little while and will quietly return when the hour asks for it. In some writing rooms, a cloth would be kept near at hand not for comfort, but for the practical needs of pages and fingers. Parchment had to be protected from accidental oil, damp skin, or the dark trace of ink that lingered after a hurried correction. The cloth might cover finished sheets, wrap a small bundle, or absorb the last residue from a pen before it touched a cleaner surface. Because it passed between so many modest duties, It became one of the desk's least noticed, but most faithful objects. Before dawn, it often lies folded, the way useful cloths do when they have been placed by long habit rather than by display. Its weave may be coarse, but its service is precise. It protects quiet order from small stains that, left alone, would become lasting faults. In this way, the cloth resembles many other domestic tools of the period. It does not transform the work. It prevents needless damage to work already done. That modest role gives it a dignity fully in keeping with the desk in the room. The room around the desk is likely narrower than later imagination prefers. A writing place in a monastery, priory, chapel house, or civic chamber did not need grand scale to feel purposeful. Stone might hold the lower walls, while beams or boards carried the upper parts. The floor could be timber, packed earth, or fitted stone worn by patient use. In cold months, the room kept nights chill in its corners, even after a lamp was lit, so desks were placed where drafts could be reduced, and the hand might work without too much stiffness. Before dawn, this surrounding enclosure matters because it presses the desk into intimacy. A large room would turn the lamp into a lonely point. A smaller room lets lamplight feel sufficient. The shelf, stool, parchment, and wax tablet belong to one contained climate of thought where even silence seems shaped by walls close enough to remember yesterday's work. That is part of why the desk feels calm. It is not isolated in darkness. It is held within a room already arranged to support concentration. The sounds that belong to such a desk are easy to overlook because most of them are softer than speech. Parchment lifted from a small stack makes a dry movement unlike cloth and unlike paper. A stylus pressed into wax gives a quieter answer than a quill on skin. A penknife set down after trimming carries a small final note against wood. The lamp may offer the faintest thread of sound when the wick steadies itself. Even breathing changes in a room like this, because one tends to listen more closely where noise is slight. Before dawn, however, these sounds are absent, and their absence gives the room a deeper stillness than emptiness alone would provide. The tools are present enough to imply the motions they usually accompany, yet none of those motions now occur. The desk holds the shape of labor without its noise. That withheld sound is soothing. It tells of work already ordered, not work collapsing into haste. The room does not ask to be filled. It simply remains ready, preserving a place where careful tasks can begin without disturbance. Records copied at such a desk might range from liturgical notes to household tallies, rent obligations, copied sermons, memoranda, legal names, and inventories of ordinary goods. Yet the desk itself does not reveal the full rank of the words it bears. A humble account and a treasured text both depend on light, surface, ink, and hand. This equality of material is one of the more calming truths of old writing rooms. Great consequence and small necessity often rested on the same board beneath the same lamp. Before dawn, when the page is unread and the room speaks only through objects, the distinction recedes further still. The desk becomes a place where writing is first of all a craft of ordering marks so they may remain after the voice is gone. That aim is quiet by nature. It asks patience from the hand and steadiness from the room. It also asks trust in storage, because what is written must later be folded, shelved, bundled, or carried elsewhere. For that reason, even a single desk participates in a larger architecture of keeping. The shelf above, the small chest below, or a nearby board chest at the wall would all help preserve what the desk began. Finished leaves needed dry rest. Seals and cords needed a known place. Reference texts, if few, had to remain where they could be found at once and returned without confusion. Medieval work was often slower than modern work, but it could not afford constant misplacement. A single missing sheet might cost another hour of searching in poor light. So the calm of the scribe's desk depends on a surrounding discipline of storage. Before dawn, That discipline appears as a kind of mercy. Because everything has its place, the coming hour does not need to start with disorder. The writer can sit down and begin. The room has already done part of the work by keeping materials in quiet relation to one another. It is a modest triumph, and an old one. Much of historical labor rested not on spectacle, but on the patient arrangement that prevented small obstacles from multiplying into fatigue. As the darkest part of night begins to loosen, the room changes without yet becoming bright. The wall behind the desk remains mostly in shadow, but the lamp no longer governs alone. A cooler softness gathers somewhere beyond the shutter or narrow opening, too faint to describe as daylight, and yet enough to thin the blackness near the ceiling beam. This early change suits the desk better than full morning. Under a stronger sun, every object would become more ordinary. Before dawn, however, the desk still lives in a quieter interval, where things are seen only as much as they need to be. The parchment edges, the rounded lip of the ink pot, the smooth worn patch on the stool, and the shallow gloss on wax all hold their places without demanding interpretation. The room keeps its balance between work and rest. It is not fully awakened, but neither is it entirely asleep. In that suspended condition, the writing desk seems almost to preserve the last careful portion of night for the sake of whatever words will soon be copied there. So the scribe's desk before dawn remains a small arrangement of wood, skin, wax, flame, and waiting, made steady by repetition and kept gentle by low light. The shelf holds back clutter. The stool keeps its patient measure. The cloth, stylus, quill, and knife stay close to the uses that shape them. And the lamp, lowering itself by degrees, preserves one last circle of practical calm before the room begins again. Nothing here strives for grandeur. The desk only keeps a place where careful marks may be made without haste, corrected without shame, and set aside without confusion. That is enough to give it quiet dignity. In the cool stillness just before dawn, the room seems to understand that enoughness perfectly, and for a little while longer it lets the tools, the surfaces, and the gathered silence remain exactly as they are.